Do you love graphic novels? Are you looking for some new ones to read this year? In this video, I'll be sharing my 10 most highly anticipated new release graphic novels. These are books I've personally pre-ordered myself. I'm excited to read them and to add them to my collection. Say hello. Starting with the first book, Land of Mirrors by Maria Medine. This book came out on February 4th, so I just got it the other day. I'm honestly not sure how I heard about this. I think I might have seen it shared on Instagram by some other illustrator. What immediately caught my eye in this one was the art. The cover itself is beautiful. I love these bold pops of color on a black background, and this silver foil is a nice touch. The typography on this cover is reminiscent of 1960s and 70s lettering, which of course I love. I'm not sure how the graphic style was created, but this definitely feels a lot more digital. Maybe it was created in Adobe Illustrator. You can see how gradients are used quite a bit in the backgrounds. Compared to other graphic novels, the text in this one is more on the minimal side, so I don't think it will take that long to read. The pages aren't numbered, but online it says that it's 332 pages. And if you want to know more about what the story is, Antonia is the sole inhabitant of a deserted town, with only a roaming pack of dogs and her own worn-out memories to keep her company. But her flower gives her purpose, a reason to get up each morning, to ring the bells of the town, to wake up the fields, and to feel alive. And yet a relentless thought eats away at her. What will happen once her flower dies? So this was actually translated from Spanish. I actually haven't read too many translated graphic novels, so I'm interested to see how that plays out in the story. And there's actually a quote on the back from one of my favorite graphic novelists, Tillie Walden. It says, "Spellbinding and inventive. Unlike any other graphic novel, a truly impressive debut." Now, I don't usually take reviews too serious. I like to make up my own mind about a book, a movie, whatever it may be. But it is nice to see quotes from other graphic novel artists that you love and respect. It makes it that much more enticing to read. So I thought this was an interesting story all about the concept of a flower. So this feels like it will be a very abstract book, which I love abstract. I don't always love super literal graphic novel stories. All the other 9 books I'll be mentioning are pre-orders. Some of them are coming out pretty soon, some farther into the year. But if you're looking for a new one to check out and dive into right now, and that story sounds interesting or you like the art, then check out this one. The next book on my list is The Confessional by Paige Hender. This one comes out on March 19th. This book is 200 pages. New Orleans, 1922. Cora Velasquez lives with her sister and her own haunted memories in a speakeasy run by a vampire coven. Unable to bear the weight of her damned soul, she turns to Father Orville, a charismatic priest and the object of her hidden desires. Their veiled courtship becomes deadly serious when he discovers her nature and proposes a way to both slake her thirst and save her soul. So begins the charged dance between an all-powerful but unsure young woman and the mortal man who claims to hold her fate in his hand. So what caught my eye and made me want to pre-order this book is the art and the story. Right away from the cover, there's a lot going on. I love the color palette. There's a lot of intricate patterns and texture. And also the story was really interesting. Nothing I'd heard before. It sounds like a little bit of a forbidden love story. Anytime I'm unsure whether I want to pre-order or buy a graphic novel in general online, a tip that I would recommend is to check out the artist online. See if they have an Instagram account or a website. Most likely they posted work on their new book, so you can get little glimpses of it, and that way you can decide, is this something I'm really interested in? So I checked out Paige's Instagram. I really loved what I saw, so that pushed me over into pre-ordering. So there's actually 3 books I pre-ordered that all come out on the same day, April 8th. One of them is called Thinking About Thinking: Impossible Thoughts and Complicated Feelings by Grant Snyder. I already knew from the title of this book that I would be interested in it. It's about overthinking, and I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling it's leaning more into the mental health side of that. It's 128 pages, facing self-doubt, overcoming fears, grappling with indecision. Snyder doesn't present solutions to these challenges, but he does inspire and encourage. offering thoughtful reassurance and a unique humorous perspective that's characteristic of his work, an approach that resonates with millions of readers all over the world. Emotions can be tricky to navigate. We overthink, we second guess, and we can't get out of our own way. The reality is, it's impossible for any of us to understand our complicated feelings fully. But fear not, because you've come to the right place. So there were some elements I was drawn to in the graphic style, mainly that you've got some watercolor painted backgrounds. But really what drew me to this one was this topic, the subject matter. I love self-help books. I'm all about creating a growth mindset, growing, becoming a better person, pushing yourself, and overcoming your own challenges. So it's nice to get a perspective on these things and in a graphic format. So if you're someone that overthinks, experiences self-doubt, or just likes to hear other perspectives on these subject matters, then check this one out. The next one I pre-ordered that comes out on the same April 8th date is I Ate the Whole World to Find You by Rachel Eng. Right away, that's just a fascinating title paired with the cover design. Super intriguing, and I wanted to know more. I Ate the Whole World to Find You maps the topography of trauma, treasures, and loss imposed into the body of Jenny, a 20-something going on 30-something partial hot mess who's routing her way more firmly into adulthood as she navigates friendship, family, and romantic relationships. Will her inability to communicate destroy her, or ultimately be her rebirth? A coworker turned prospective lover confesses a hard-to-swallow fetish. A train ride fantastically goes off the rails as old habits get dragged across the tracks. Cousins revisit summer holiday bliss, or was it really horror? Exes fumble and attempt to reconnect over a dip in the pool on a squelching summer day, and an expectant mother slips into an unusual place as she embarks on a communion with her baby more pure than language can accommodate. This one looks like it's on the longer side, 316 pages. From what I can tell from the preview images, it's mostly black line art with some gray fills. The first few graphic novels I showed were all predominantly in color, but this is the first one I'm introducing in this list that is black line work only. I'm curious to know, what are your favorite types of graphic novels? Do you gravitate more towards those full color compositions? Do you like one or two colors? Or do you just love the simplicity of black and white? Let me know in a comment below. So the reason I pre-ordered this one is, one, the title and the cover design. It seemed really interesting. I was also intrigued by the idea of it being set in Australia. I don't think I've read many graphic novels or books in general from Australia, so I don't know if it'll play a big role in the story though. It seems like a little bit of a coming of age story. I love to read memoirs or stories in general following women through their 20s and 30s, navigating those changes and evolutions. So I'm looking forward to reading this story. The third graphic novel I pre-ordered that comes out on April 8th is Skin. And this looks like it's an author-illustrator collaboration because there's two names. Actually, there's three names listed. There's the author. I do not know how to pronounce some of these. Mike Versip. And there's an illustrator, Savian Clement, and also a translator, Sammy Coote. So this will actually be the second translated graphic novel I will read from this list. This lyrical graphic novel paints a captivating portrait of two women in search of themselves. Feeling adrift after her daughter leaves the nest, Rita makes the audacious move to model nude for a live drawing class. There, she meets Esther, an artist who sees beyond the superficial and captures people's true essences in her drawings. The two connect as kindred spirits, and their unexpected yet endearing relationship teaches them to accept their eccentricities and feel comfortable in their own skin. It's 288 pages. It looks like it has a limited color palette, mostly of greens and yellows, which is interesting. I don't think I've seen too many graphic novels using this type of color palette. It also looks like it's pretty minimal with the words. So why I pre-ordered this one? Mainly because of the story. It seems like it's about a female friendship of connection. I think I'm pretty much a broken record here, but I love memoir stories following women through various times, and then anything that's on some sort of relationship, or in this instance, a female friendship, I love reading about those. The style is impressionistic watercolors. So if you're interested in stories of female friendship or friendships in general, and you like watercolor art, then you might want to check this one out. The next book is Terminal Exposure: Comics, Sculpture, and Risky Behavior by Michael Macmillan. This one comes out on April 15th, and it's 200 pages. Honestly, I wasn't too drawn to what I could see of the art of this one, although I could be wrong, and maybe when I have it in my hands, I might love it. But the story is what captured my interest for this one. Michael Macmillan has said he's not really a cartoonist, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Born and raised in California, he studied architecture and design before a visit in 1969 to an exhibition of Chicago's Harry Hu, and encounters with the burgeoning San Francisco underground comic scene convinced Macmillan to make his own comics. He plunged in, drawing for legendary publications like Weirdo, Young Lust, Let Me Outta Here, Arcade, and eventually his own one-issue wonder, Terminal. Over the following decades, Macmillan kept playing with the form of comics. He reimagined the kind of stories single-panel, two-panel, and many-panel strips could tell, blending favorite genres from his childhood, horror, swords, sandals, and science fiction, with more mature themes, autobiography, dating, sex, into new and striking forms. What I was drawn to here is he was born and raised in California, and the mention of San Francisco. So anytime stories are set in the backdrop of San Francisco or California in general, I am going to want to read them because it's where I'm from. I don't know much about Michael's work outside of discovering this graphic novel, but it sounds like from the synopsis that he's been in the comic business for decades, which is interesting. I couldn't really find a lot of him online. On his Instagram, it's mostly clips of interviews and personal things, which it's funny. I've noticed that older illustrators and comic artists tend to be less active online, which makes sense. They're not of the generation that grew up with this, so it's more of an afterthought. And also they don't need to, because when you have decades of experience, you have work coming to you. You don't need to do a lot of the marketing and selling of yourself that newer artists breaking into the industry need to do now. It's an interesting title for a book, Terminal Exposure. It seems a bit random. I personally pay a lot of attention to how books are marketed, like everything from the title, the summary on the back, and just how the artist or the publisher is marketing it. I find it fascinating. And also from a consumer standpoint, understanding what draws my attention, what makes me put something down immediately. But I'm excited to read this one and see how California, San Francisco, 1969 is weaved into the story. Coming out on May 6th is Drawing Is Your Guide to Scribbled Adventures by Elizabeth Hadel. This is a pretty short book. It's only 72 pages. And how I heard about this one is I attended a live comics workshop on Zoom back in December, and this was one of the hosts. So that's how I was introduced to her work and the fact that she had a book coming out soon. And based on the preview images that I saw and also the work that she shared in the workshop and on her Instagram, I was instantly hooked and very curious to check this one out. So it's less of a graphic novel in the sense of a story and probably more of a practical creative guide. An inspiring and affirming book on drawing and how to think about drawing. What happens when you pick up a pencil? How do you talk to yourself about drawing while you're drawing? Where do your scribbles start and where do they lead? Are you ready to find out? If you ever picked up a pencil, drawn, stopped drawing, started again, doodle without purpose, sketched with intention, been disappointed with your art and thrown it out, yet turn the page to try a new experiment, this book is for you. All you need is a drawing surface, a drawing tool, a dot, and a line. Whatever your skill level, you're invited to draw along. So this one actually has a reading age of 8 to 12 years, but I think anyone over 8 could benefit from this. I love these types of instructional, creative, inspiration type books, and there's a lot of great examples of illustration in it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this book can give me some new ideas for drawing and push me creatively. Coming out on May 20th, Spent, a comic novel by Alison Bechdel. This author-illustrator has made many graphic novels, and honestly, I haven't read any of them yet. I've seen a few of them available at my local library: Fun Home, Are You My Mother, and The Secret to Superhuman Strength. And I've been meaning to read them, but honestly, I think I want this to be the first book that I read of their work, read something fresh and new, and then slowly go back into their catalog and check out the other books. And they are a New York Times best-selling author. A cartoonist named Alison Bechdel, running a pygmy goat sanctuary in Vermont, is existentially irked by a climate-challenged world and a citizenry on the brink of civil war. She wonders, can she pull humanity out of its death spiral by writing a scathingly self-critical memoir about her own greed and privilege? Meanwhile, Allison's first graphic memoir about growing up with her father, a taxidermist who specialized in replicas of Victorian animal displays, has been adapted into a highly successful TV series. It's a phenomenon that makes Allison, formerly on the cultural margins, the envy of her friend group, recognizable as characters now middle-aged and living communally in Vermont. As the TV show Death and Taxidermy racks up Emmy after Emmy, and when Allison's Pauline Bunyan-esque partner Holly posts an instructional wood chopping video that goes viral, Allison's own envy spirals. Why couldn't she be the writer for a critically lauded and wildly popular reality TV show like Queer Eye, showing people how to free themselves from consumer capitalism and live in a more ethical life? This one is 272 pages. This is another example where it's a very fully established illustrator who's been in the business and published for decades at this point, and they don't have a big online presence. So I had a hard time finding what the art looked like in this one. I think it might be in color. And really the reason why I decided to pre-order this one is because Allison is a well-known comic illustrator and I wanted to check out their work. And like I said, I think I want this new book to be my first experience. If you have read any of Allison's work, let me know which of their books you loved the most in a comment below. I was also intrigued by the fact that the main characters in this story are middle-aged, so they're, a decade or so older than me. I like to see characters with perspective and see what I can learn from them. Coming out later in the year on September 2nd is Tuck Everlasting, the graphic novel adaptation by Catherine Woodman Maynard. So this is the first graphic novel adaptation in the list so far. I think all of them are all original fiction, nonfiction stories, but this is a graphic novel adaptation, and what that means is it's already an existing story, and the illustrator or author, they're adapting that story in a new format for a new audience. I've read quite a few graphic novel adaptations, and for the most part, I really love them, especially if I'm familiar with the story, because then I get to experience a new perspective on the story. I actually read one of her books a few months ago, The Great Gatsby, a graphic novel adaptation, and I loved it. I haven't read this book probably since required reading in high school, so it was really interesting to relive the story, see what I remembered, and just see it in a whole new light. I bought a signed copy directly from her shop. I love how she added an illustration. This is by far probably one of the best custom signed books I've ever received with an illustration. And I actually bought one of the original art pieces from the book. So you can see this page here from the story, and this is the original I bought. I believe the line art is printed digitally, but it's original watercolor. I just picked this up a couple weeks ago after getting it framed. I'm waiting for a few other graphic novel original art pieces, and I'll hang them all at the same time. I highly recommend that if you find a graphic novel that you love and you know that it's done traditionally, look it up online and see if they sell any of the originals. It's a great way to own and collect art, and also another way to support the artist if that's something you want to do. Her style is a mix of digital and analog. You'll notice all of these beautiful watercolor illustrations, and it looks like Tuck Everlasting is a natural progression in that style. I honestly don't know anything about the story. I have not read the original, so I'm interested in reading this with new eyes as someone who knows nothing of the original classic story and seeing it in a new light. What if you could live forever? In this timeless story about immortality, friendship, and growing up, young Winnie Foster learns of a hidden spring in a nearby wood and meets the Tuck family, whose members reveal their astonishing discovery of the spring's life-changing power. Now, Winnie must decide what to do with her newfound knowledge, and the Tucks must decide what to do with her. But it's not just the curious girl who is interested in their remarkable tale. A suspicious stranger is also searching for the Tucks, and he will stop at nothing until he finds them and uncovers their secret. So if you love classic literature and you want to dip your toes into graphic novels, or maybe you already love this story and you're just curious how it's adapted in a new format, then you'll definitely want to check this one out. And the last book on this list is Do Admit, The Mitford Sisters and Me by Mimi Pond, and this one comes out on September 16th. Born with pedigrees but without the pocketbooks to match, the Mitfords were certainly no strangers to lies, intrigue, or scandal. Nancy, Pamela, Diana, Unity, Jessica, and Deborah, all 6 sisters, were weaned on their family's well-documented upper-class eccentricities. A ne'er-do-well would-be entrepreneur father, a stern, stiff upper-lipped mother, a revolving door of governesses of varying propriety, all against the backdrop of a crumbling estate falling into disrepair. The sisters grew from cloistered, turn-of-the-century country girls into debutantes who would marry into political influence, for better or worse. Is it any wonder that a young working-class Mimi in Southern California becomes enamored with the Mitfords' downright fanciful, rich and famous lifestyle? This charming, inventively cartooned, and lovingly researched biography captures the dramatic, over-the-top antics of high society's strongest personalities as they rubbed elbows with some of history's most infamous fascists and communists. I think this is the longest book on the list at 452 pages. I've actually read one of Mimi Pond's other books. I read Over Easy, which came out in 2014. I think it's one of her earliest pieces of work. And I was really drawn to the cover of that one and the art, so beautiful. And it was set, I think, in California 1970s, so that also caught my attention. But I am even more interested in checking this one out because I think the graphic style is even better. It looks like it uses a blue color palette, which is one of my favorite colors. A lot of fascinating portraits. So the story seems quite intense in this one. It seems much more historical, about rich versus poor. So it wasn't really the story that caught my attention, but more so the art that I was really intrigued to see. But who knows, maybe I will fall in love with the story too. I also really love Mimi's lettering. I saw this in the Over Easy book that I read, and I'm curious to see how it evolved over 11 years. So those were the 10 highly anticipated new release graphic novels coming out this year in 2025 that I pre-ordered and am excited to read. I'm sure that there's so many more amazing graphic novel books that are coming out this year. So if there's one that I missed that you're really excited to read, let me know by leaving a comment below. I'd love to hear about it.